The ghost ship in the void, the black of deep space, was endless. Jackson Rourke sat in the cockpit of his small repair craft, staring at the flickering distress beacon on his scanner dot. It was faint, almost lost in the static, but it kept pulsing. Someone, or something, was calling for help. Jackson was a Terran mechanic, not a hero. Most distress calls in this part of the galaxy were traps. Pirates used them to lure in ships and strip them for parts. But this signal was different. It was old, weak, and it came from coordinates no ship should be drifting in. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the autopilot. If I'm smart, I ignore this and keep flying. But he'd been drifting for weeks with nothing but stale ration bars and static on the comb. Curiosity, and maybe boredom, pushed him to set course. When he reached the coordinates, the sight made his chest tighten. A huge vessel floated in the void, black against black, almost invisible, except for faint silver lines across its hull. It had no engines running, no lights, no movement. It looked less like a machine and more like a creature, its surface curved and smooth like bone. Jackson leaned closer to the glass. The ship had an unsettling beauty, graceful but wrong, like something built to move through shadows. He hailed it twice. No answer. His scanner showed breathable air inside, but no life signs. That meant either the crew was gone, or the scanner was wrong. Still, the mechanic in him itched to see inside. He docked his small craft to an airlock and stepped through. Inside, the silence was heavy. The walls were not metal, but something softer, like a strange alloy mixed with organic material. They curved in smooth arcs, glowing faintly from within, as if the ship had veins of light. Every step echoed too loudly. The air was warm, almost like a living thing's breath. Jackson's instincts screamed at him to leave, but his boots kept moving. He told himself he was just looking for the source of the distress signal, but part of him wanted to know what kind of ship this was. He passed through a long corridor and entered what looked like the main control chamber. The room was circular, with a raised platform in the center. Strange symbols shimmered across its surface, glowing faint red. He touched one, and the entire room pulsed. The glow spread across the walls like ripples in water. Then, a voice. "You came." Jackson froze. It was a woman's voice, low, smooth, and cold. He turned, and from the shadows at the far side of the chamber, she appeared tall, skin pale as moonlight, hair the color of midnight, falling around her shoulders like silk, eyes deep crimson, fixed on him with a hunger that wasn't entirely human. She wore a long, dark coat that shimmered faintly in the light. But what caught him most was the way she moved, silent, fluid, like a predator that didn't need to rush. Jackson's voice caught. I got your distress signal." "Yes," she said. Her lips curved slightly, but it wasn't quite a smile. "My ship is dying. Its heart is failing. Without it, we will drift until the void swallows us." "We?" Jackson asked, scanning the room. "I don't see anyone else." The woman stepped closer, and he noticed her eyes glinting in the dim light. "The ship and I are one. It breathes because I breathe. It lives because I live." Jackson swallowed. He had heard of strange biotech ships in deep space, but nothing like this. "I'm a mechanic," he said cautiously. "Maybe I can help, but I'll need to see the core." She tilted her head, studying him like she was deciding whether to trust him or eat him. Finally, she said, "Follow me, Terran." They moved through narrow, twisting corridors until they reached a chamber unlike any engine room Jackson had seen. At its center was a large, pulsating mass, glowing faintly. It looked alive, its surface expanding and contracting like it was breathing. But the glow was weak, fading with each pulse. "This is the heart," she said softly, placing a hand on it. Her fingers sank slightly into its surface, and it shivered under her touch. It needs energy. Blood energy. Jackson frowned. Blood energy? That's not exactly in my repair manual. Her red eyes locked on his. I can give some, but not enough. To save it, I will need yours. Jackson stepped back. Wait, you're saying, yes, she interrupted. A small amount will awaken it. More will restore it fully. Without it, I die. And so does the ship. The room seemed to grow warmer. The glow of the heart pulsed slower, like it was waiting, listening. Jackson's pulse quickened. He came here chasing curiosity. Now he wasn't sure if he'd just stepped into salvation, or a trap. Blood in the air. Jackson stood staring at the pulsing heart of the vampire vessel. Its faint glow seemed to drag his gaze deeper, like it was silently calling him. Behind him, the pale woman's voice cut through the heavy air. I am Captain Seralia Vare, and you, Terran, are the first living soul to answer my call. Her words carried a strange weight, not quite gratitude, not quite threat. Jackson forced himself to look away from the strange breathing core. I came because I thought someone needed help, not because I wanted to bleed for a ship. Seralia stepped closer. A dim light caught the faint shimmer of her coat, the smooth curve of her pale cheek. Her eyes, deep crimson, didn't blink. You fix machines, she said. I fix people. But this vessel is neither. It is alive, yet not flesh. It is dead, yet not gone. And right now, it is starving. Jackson rubbed the back of his neck. Okay, suppose I believe you. Let's say I don't want to donate blood to a giant space organism. Do we have another option? Her lips curved, almost amused. You could walk away, back to your little craft, drift away into the dark, but you came this far. She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping lower. And I do not think you will leave without knowing what this ship truly is. Against his better judgment, Jackson stayed. He unpacked his tools and began inspecting the outer casing of the heart. It was warm to the touch, like skin, and faint vibrations ran through it, like a heartbeat struggling to keep time. He noticed something odd. Fine, silver filaments were threaded through the surface, connecting to strange sockets. They reminded him of intravenous tubes, but instead of fluid, they seemed made to carry something else. Can you connect it to an external power cell? He asked. Seralia shook her head. It will not drink from dead energy. It must taste life, he muttered under his breath. Yeah, I figured you'd say that. As he worked, his wrench slipped, and the jagged edge of a panel sliced across his palm. A sharp sting, then warm blood welled up and slid down his fingers. Before he could grab a rag, a drop of blood fell onto the heart's surface. The reaction was immediate. The glow brightened. The pulse quickened. A faint, almost content sound, like a deep hum, filled the chamber. Jackson froze. Oh, that's not good. Seralia was suddenly beside him, moving faster than he'd seen before. Her gaze locked on the thin trail of blood across the heart. It knows you now, she said softly. Her tone was unreadable, somewhere between awe and hunger. The ship recognizes you. It accepts you. Jackson pulled his hand back quickly. Yeah? Well, I don't accept it. But even as he said it, he could feel something. A faint connection. The rhythm of the heart seemed to match the pounding in his chest. And for a moment, he could almost sense thoughts. You felt it, didn't you? Seralia asked quietly. Jackson avoided her eyes. I'm just here to fix your ship. That's all. You're here because fate put you here, she replied. And fate rarely makes mistakes. They worked in silence for a while. Or rather, he worked, and she stood nearby, watching with an intensity that made his skin prickle. Once, he glanced up and found her not watching the tools, but watching his hands and the small smear of dried blood on his knuckles. When he finally stepped back, the heart was glowing a little stronger. I patched the damaged conduits. It should hold for a while. Seralia tilted her head slightly. You bought us time, but not life. The heart will need more of you. Jackson sighed. You keep saying that like it's already decided. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. It is. As he packed his tools, the ship shuddered faintly. Not from the heart. From outside. Somewhere in the distance, his scanner picked up faint movement. Seralia's eyes shifted toward the dark ceiling, as if she could hear something beyond the walls. They found us. Who? Jackson asked. She looked at him, her crimson gaze steady. Hunters. And they will not care if you are Terran or vampire. To them, you are just prey. The ship's hunger, the hum of the heart chamber followed Jackson long after he left it. Even in the empty corridors, he could still hear it, slow, steady, almost in rhythm with his own heartbeat. He told himself it was just his imagination. It W-A-Sun single quotes T out as he walked. Doors along the corridor opened for him without a sound. He hadn't touched any control panels, hadn't called for them. They simply reacted to him. Not creepy at all. He muttered under his breath. When he reached the control deck, Seralia was already there, standing in the center like she owned every shadow in the room. The faint starlight from the viewport painted her. Pale skin silver, her crimson eyes glowing faintly in the dark. You feel it now, don't you? She said, the ship knows you. Jackson dropped into one of the strange, half-organic chairs. It knows me because it tasted my blood. That's all. That's not all, she replied. Her voice was soft, but her words carried a weight that made him tense. You gave it a path, a connection. You've been marked. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. Look, I came here to fix a broken ship, not to become best friends with it. Her lips curved in a faint smile. This vessel doesn't make friends, Terran. It makes bonds. And once made, they do not break easily. The conversation ended abruptly when the deck lights flickered. A faint tremor ran through the floor. Jackson frowned. That the hunters? Seralia nodded once. They're close, but not in weapons range. Yet. The ship's hum grew louder, almost like it was impatient. Jackson felt a strange pressure in his chest, a faint pull, as if the vessel itself was asking him for something. He shook his head. You said it needs more blood. But how much? Are we talking here? A drop? A pint? Or are we talking full-on horror holoshow? Seralia's gaze didn't waver. Enough to awaken it fully. Enough for it to fight back. Jackson let out a sharp laugh, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. I need my blood to keep me alive. She stepped closer, her coat whispering against the floor. I told you before, Terran, we are bound now. When it hungers, you will feel it. When it suffers, you will suffer if it dies. I die too, he finished for her. There was no dramatic thunder in deep space, but in that moment, Jackson felt the same heaviness as a storm about to break. His instincts told him to run back to his own ship and get as far away as possible. But something colder and stranger kept him still. He wasn't sure if it was curiosity or the ship's will pressing on his own dot as he prepared to check. The outer hull for battle readiness, the wall panel next to him shifted. Not slid open, shifted like muscle under skin. A narrow recess formed, revealing a faintly glowing conduit with threads of silver inside. Without knowing why, Jackson reached out. The moment his fingers brushed it, a warm surge pulsed up his arm. The hum in his chest synced perfectly with the ship's rhythm. Seralia's voice was suddenly right behind him. It likes you. Jackson pulled his hand back, unsettled. Ships aren't supposed to like people. This one does, she said, her tone almost possessive. And it will defend those it bonds with, but only if it feeds. He turned to face her. Why me? There's billions of people out there. Why did it choose me? Her crimson eyes softened slightly. Because you came when no one else would. Because you touched it without fear. Jackson almost laughed again, but stopped when he realized something. She wasn't talking about the ship. She was talking about herself. Before he could answer, the deck lights shifted to deep crimson. A low alarm tone pulsed through the air. They found weapons range, Seralia said calmly. You have a choice, Terran. Give the ship what it needs, or we both die in the dark. The hum in Jackson's chest grew faster. The pull was stronger now, almost irresistible. Somewhere deep inside the ship, the heart was calling to him, not in words, but in pure, primal hunger. And despite every warning screaming in his head, he was starting to think about saying yes. Enemies in the dark. The ship's lights glowed blood red, bathing the control deck in an eerie haze. Jackson could feel the vibration through the floor, a low hum that wasn't just mechanical. It was alive, restless, and hungry. Outside, the black void began to shift. Dots of cold white light moved across the viewport. They weren't stars. They were ships. How many? Jackson asked, keeping his voice steady. Seralia's crimson eyes didn't leave the display. 300 vessels, fast, armed. It's no weakness. Jackson frowned. Then they're about to find out they're wrong. They will. If you feed the heart, she replied. Jackson gripped the edge of the console. You keep saying that like it's nothing. You're asking me to give blood to a ship that, honestly, I still don't understand. Seralia turned to face him, her coat flowing like liquid shadow. You understand enough. The ship needs you. Without your life force, it will not rise. And without it rising, we will die. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it, the kind that didn't bend. Jackson shook his head. There's got to be another way. Can't you feed it yourself? I can, she said softly, but I am not enough. I've already given more than I should. My blood and the ships are bound. It will fight for me, but it will live for you. The hunters were closing in fast. Their ships formed a loose triangle, hemming the vampire vessel in from 3 sides. A low warning tone began to pulse, steady and cold. They'll open fire in 60 seconds, Seralia said. Her voice was still calm, but her eyes burned. Choose, Terran, your blood or your grave. Jackson swore under his breath. Every instinct screamed no. But then he remembered the sound of the heart quickening at the touch of his blood, and the faint, almost grateful hum that had followed. He stepped forward. All right, tell me what to do. Seralia's lips curved. Not a smile, but something sharper. She led him quickly through the corridor toward the heart chamber. The walls seemed to pulse as they moved, the glow brightening at their approach. The ship knew dotted the heart. Seralia motioned for him to stand before it. Her pale hands rested lightly on his shoulders. You may feel it pulling at you. Do not fight it. Let it drink until I say stop. That's easy for you to say. Jackson muttered, rolling up his sleeve. Seralia's fangs caught the light as she leaned in, her eyes locked on his. This will hurt, but you will survive. Before he could reply, she bit into his wrist, quick, sharp, precise. Pain flared, then faded into a strange warmth as she guided his arm toward the heart. The moment his blood touched its surface, the reaction was violent. The heart blazed with light, its slow pulse surging into a rapid, powerful beat. The walls trembled. Conduits lit up in a wave, spreading power through the entire vessel. Jackson gasped as a rush of energy shot through him, almost like the ship was feeding back into him. He could feel its presence now, vast, ancient, hungry, and aware of him completely. "That's enough." Seralia's voice broke through the haze. She pulled his arm back gently, sealing the wound with a touch of her cold fingers. The glow of the heart was steady now, strong. "All systems responding," she said. "Come, Terran. Let us show them what they have hunted." Back on the control deck, Jackson dropped into the weapons station. The interface felt strange under his hands. Half metal, half living tissue, but it moved like it knew what he wanted. Outside, the hunters closed in. One of them fired a warning shot that streaked past the vampire vessel's hull. Jaxon grinned. Despite himself. Big mistake. Seralia's voice cut through the tension, cool and sharp. "Fire!" The ship responded instantly. From its sides, beams of crimson light erupted, tearing through the nearest hunter ship like paper. The explosion lit the void, the shock waves scattering the other two. Jackson's hands moved over the controls, and the ship moved with him, turning, striking, hunting. For the first time, he felt the power Seralia had spoken of, and it was intoxicating. Second Hunter tried to flank them, but the vampire vessel was faster. Its weapons roared again, and another explosion flared in the dark. The third ship fled. Silence returned to the void, broken only by the faint hum of the living vessel. Jackson leaned back, breathing hard. "Guess I'm not just the mechanic anymore." Seralia's eyes glimmered as she looked at him. "No, Terran. You are its blood now, and it will not let you go." Fire and fang, the wreckage of the hunter ships still drifted in the void, glowing faintly from the heat of the battle. Jackson's hands were still tight on the weapon controls, his heart pounding in his chest. The ship's hum filled the control deck, not the weak, dying rhythm from before, but a deep, strong pulse that matched his own. It almost felt proud. Seralia stood beside him, her crimson eyes fixed on the fading debris. "They will not forgive this," she said softly. "They will come back, in greater numbers." Jackson smirked. "Good. Gives me a chance to test drive this thing again." Her gaze slid to him, unreadable. "You're changing, Terran. I can hear it in your voice." Before he could answer, alarms flared again. The ship's sensors painted a new picture on the display. A much larger vessel had just entered the system. It was armed, shielded, and moving straight toward them. "Reinforcements," Seralia said. Her voice was calm, but her hands gripped the console tighter. The new ship didn't waste time. Its first volley slammed into the vampire vessel's shields, making the deck shudder. The living walls rippled, almost like they were in pain. Jackson felt it in his own chest, a heavy, burning ache that wasn't his. He clenched his teeth. "They're hurting it." Seralia's head turned sharply. "You feel that?" He nodded. "Yeah, and I don't like it." The ship pushed back with its own weapons, but the larger hunter was faster, dodging the crimson beams. Its return fire tore across the vampire vessel's hull, stripping away black armor in jagged chunks. Jackson's vision blurred for a moment, not from fear, but from the strange bond pulling harder than ever. The ship wasn't just connected. To him, it was feeding from him. And it needed more. Seralia moved quickly, stepping in front of him. "You must give it again," she said. "More than before, or it will die, and we will die with it." Jackson hesitated only a second. "Fine, but make it quick." They raced back to the heart chamber. This time, the glow was already fading, the pulse slowing. It looked weaker than it had after the first feeding, almost desperate. Seralia took his wrist without asking. Her fangs slid into his skin, sharp and precise. The sting was followed by a rush of warmth, and then his blood was flowing into the heart again. The reaction was stronger than before. The heart blazed with light, and Jackson felt a surge of raw power flood through him. His vision sharpened, His muscles felt lighter, and he could hear the ship's thoughts, wordless, but clear, faster. Strike, hunt. Back on the control deck, Jackson didn't need Soralia's orders. He slid into the weapons station, and the ship responded instantly, moving like it anticipated his every thought. They closed in on the larger hunter ship, weaving through its barrage of fire. The vampire vessel's organic cannons pulsed with crimson light, firing shot after shot. One blast tore straight through the enemy's shields, scorching its hull. The second punched into its engines, sending it spinning into the void. The third finished it, a bright explosion lighting up the dark like a sun. Silence returned, heavy and deep. The ship slowed, drifting in the aftermath of the fight. Jackson leaned back, his chest heaving, but not from exhaustion, from exhilaration. That, he said, grinning, was the best fight I've ever had. Soralia's gaze lingered on him, her eyes unreadable but intense. You are not just a mechanic anymore, Terran. You are part of this ship now, part of me. Jackson's grin faded slightly. And what exactly does that mean? Her lips curved, showing just the barest hint of fang. It means you will never walk away. The gift of the night Jackson woke in the crew quarters, though he didn't remember falling asleep. The last thing he recalled was the glow of the heart chamber fading to a steady pulse after the battle. Now, as he sat up, something felt off. The room was dark, lit only by a faint silver glow from the viewport. Yet Jackson could see everything clearly. The fine cracks in the wall plating, the faint ripple in the floor where the living metal shifted. His eyes didn't strain. He didn't even blink. He stood and realized his steps were silent. Too silent. When he glanced at the mirror panel on the wall, his own reflection looked back, but sharper. His features were the same, yet his eyes had a faint red sheen under the light. He frowned. This isn't normal. The door slid open without a sound, and Soralia stepped inside. Her crimson gaze swept over him, reading him like an open book. You feel it, don't you? She said. Jackson crossed his arms. Feel what? The change, she replied softly. The ship has touched your blood twice. Each time the bond grows. You are faster now, stronger. You see in the dark. Soon you will feel the hunger too. Jackson shook his head. No thanks. I like being human. Her lips curved in a way that made his pulse quicken. Perhaps. But the bond doesn't care. What you like. He followed her to the control deck, where the void stretched endlessly beyond the viewport. There were no hunters in sight, but Soralia's expression stayed tense. They will come again, she said. They always come again. Jackson leaned against the console. Then maybe we hit them first. Soralia glanced at him, and for the first time, a small smile touched her face. Spoken like a hunter, Jackson shrugged. Spoken like someone who doesn't like being chased. They moved to the strategy table, the ship projecting a faint map of the nearby systems. One of them glowed with a faint red mark. That is where the hunters are nesting now, Soralia said. They keep their supply ships and their wounded there. Strike it, and we weaken them. Jackson stared at the glowing mark. Sounds like suicide. It would be, she said, if you were still just a mechanic. As they planned, Jackson noticed the ship's hum again. It wasn't just sound. It was a feeling in his bones, in his heartbeat. And this time, it was pushing thoughts into his mind. Images, the hunter base, drifting in space. Weapons firing. A victory cry in the dark. He took a step back from the table. Soralia, the ship's showing me things. In my head. Her expression didn't change. It speaks to you? Now, that is good. It means you are ready. Ready for what? Her gaze locked on his. To fight like one of us. Later, in the heart chamber, Jackson stood before the glowing mass again. It pulsed steady, like it was breathing just for him. He felt its hunger, but it wasn't desperate this time. It was expectant. Seria stood beside him. When we reach the hunters, the battle will be fierce. If you give now, it will store the strength. Enough for what's coming. He hesitated. Every time he gave, the ship grew stronger. And he changed a little more. But walking away wasn't an option anymore. He rolled up his sleeve. Seralia didn't bite this time. Instead, a thin silver filament extended from the heart itself, touching his skin. The moment it pierced, heat spread through him, and his vision flooded with sharp clarity. For a moment, he saw not with his eyes, but with the ship's. The stars shifted, the void curved. He felt the endless reach of its senses. The cold, the hunger, the readiness to strike. When it released him, he stumbled back, gasping. Seralia's hand caught his shoulder. "Now you understand," she said. "You are not just part of the crew. You are part of the vessel's soul." Jackson met her gaze. "And what happens when it wants more than I can give?" Her smile was faint, but her eyes glowed like fire. "Then it will take it, and you will give it gladly." Blood and stars. The hunter base hung in the void like a floating fortress, its jagged metal spires catching the light of a dying star. Around it drifted a swarm of smaller patrol ships, their engines glowing faint blue. Jackson stood on the control deck beside Seralia, staring at the holographic display. The ship's hum was steady in his chest, almost like a second heartbeat. He could feel its focus. It wanted this fight. "Once we're in range, they'll throw everything at us," Seralia said. Her voice was calm, but there was a dangerous edge beneath it. "They will not allow a vampire vessel to strike their nest." Jackson smirked. "They'll learn we're not just a vampire vessel." Her crimson gaze flicked to him. "No, we are something far older now, and far more dangerous." The ship surged forward, cutting through the dark like a shadow with teeth. As they approached, the patrol ships broke formation, moving in to intercept. Jackson slid into the weapons station. The controls felt like an extension of his own thoughts. He barely had to touch them for the ship to respond. The first volley of crimson fire tore through 2 patrol ships in seconds. The explosions lit the void, debris scattering like sparks from a forge. The rest of the hunters opened fire, filling space with streaks of blue plasma. The ship twisted around the incoming fire, moving with an agility no lifeless vessel could match. Jackson could feel the movement in his own body, every roll, every turn, as if he was inside the ship and the ship was inside him. They broke through the patrol line and closed in on the base. The fortress began to glow with charging weapons. Massive cannons lined the outer walls, their barrels turning toward the vampire vessel .Cral, and glanced at him. "Now, Terran, feed it." Jackson didn't hesitate this time. He pressed his palm against the heart's surface, and the silver filaments slid into his skin. The heat surged through him, his vision flooding with the ship's sight, every enemy position, every weak point, every path to victory. The ship roared to life. Its weapons blazed, striking the base's cannons before they could fire. Each shot tore through walls of steel, ripping the fortress apart piece by piece. The hunters scrambled to defend themselves, launching wave after wave of smaller craft. But the vampire vessel was a predator now, fast, precise, relentless. Jackson felt its hunger with every kill. He gave it more, feeling his own strength waver, but refusing to stop. A massive explosion ripped through the base's central spire, sending fragments spinning into space. The structure began to collapse inward, fire spilling from its wounds. Jackson leaned hard on the controls, guiding the ship through the debris field. The last of the hunter ships tried to escape, but Seralia's voice was cold and final. No survivors. The ship's weapons obeyed, and the fleeing vessels were gone in moments. Silence returned. The base was nothing but drifting wreckage. The stars beyond were clear once more. Jackson sank back in his seat, every muscle trembling. The bond with the ship still hummed inside him, but the hunger was satisfied. For now, Seralia stood beside him, her pale face lit by the dying glow of the wreckage. "You have done what no other Terran has done," she said. "You fought as one with the vessel. You fought as one with me." Jackson managed a tired grin. "Guess I'm not just a mechanic anymore." Her lips curved slightly. "No, you are. Something more. And now the stars will whisper your name with fear." They stood together at the viewport, watching the wreckage drift away into the void. The ship's pulse was slow and deep, almost like it was sleeping after the hunt. Jackson knew it wouldn't stay that way forever. He also knew he wouldn't want it to. Somewhere in the darkness beyond, other enemies would be hearing about what had happened here. And sooner or later, they'd come looking. Jackson's hand rested on the console, feeling the faint warmth of the ship under his palm. When they came, he'd be ready. He, Seralia, and the living vampire vessel, bound in blood, hunger, and stars.